My father sold the family business and never realized he sold it to me. My name is Avery Thompson. I was 33 years old when my family learned the most expensive lesson of their lives at Thanksgiving dinner. Silence does not always mean weakness. Sometimes it means the person at the table already knows exactly how this ends. The house in Oakbrook looked the same as it always had. Perfect lawn. Perfect dishes. Perfect lighting. The kind of house that performs success so well it almost makes you forget how much contempt is sitting under the surface. My father kept checking his phone with that smug little expression he wore whenever he thought he was about to impress a room. My mother was smiling too brightly. My brother Derek looked like a man already spending money that was not in his account yet. My younger sister Haley was practically vibrating with excitement before the turkey even hit the table. And me? I just watched. Because I had seen that look on my father's face before. It was the look he wore right before reminding me that in this family, I was never the one who mattered. Then dinner started. And right on schedule, he stood up with his wineglass and announced he was selling the family business. Not passing it down. Not keeping it in the family. Selling it. Then came the second blow. He made it clear I was getting nothing. No title. No share. No courtesy. Not even the fake kind of warmth people use when they know they are erasing you in public. Everyone reacted exactly the way you'd expect. Derek looked betrayed. Haley panicked about image. My mother tried to calm the room without actually challenging anything. And I asked one question. Dad? Who's the buyer? He straightened like a man holding one last card. Avengers Holdings. He said. 53 million. Serious people. I nodded once and said, Dad, I am Avengers Holdings. And just like that, Thanksgiving stopped being a holiday and became an autopsy. That opening Thanksgiving reveal, including the sale, the cutout inheritance, and Avery's line, I am Avengers Holdings, is directly from the text you shared? To understand why that line hit like a bomb, you have to understand the family I came from. My grandfather built Thompson Logistics Systems in 1982. My father turned it into a respected Midwest software company for trucking, shipping, and supply chain firms. In public, it was called a family legacy. In private, it was my father's kingdom. And every kingdom has a chosen heir. It was never me. I was the middle child. The one who noticed patterns too quickly. The one who asked too many questions. The one who actually understood how the technology worked under the polished sales language. By 12, I was teaching myself code. By 16, I was building prototype dashboards for fun. By college, I had the grades, the internships, and the technical skill to earn a real seat at that table. But in my father's world, usefulness had less value than image, and image had less value than tradition. Derek was tradition in a tailored suit. Right handshake. Right confidence. Wrong depth. He loved golf. Loved clients. Loved being photographed beside things other people had actually built. Haley didn't care about the company itself, but she loved everything that came with being attached to it. Money. Image. Legacy captions. Soft focus privilege with good lighting. My mother's role was simpler. She smoothed everything. Poured wine over conflict. mistook silence for peace. That was the family rhythm. Derek was praised. Haley was indulged. My father was obeyed. And I was tolerated. The source lays out Avery's role in the family. Derek, as the preferred heir, Haley as the image child, and Avery, as the technically capable but dismissed daughter. I still remember the moment I finally understood the rules would never change for me. I was 23. Standing in front of a room full of executives and clients at one of my father's summer business retreats. I had built a serious presentation on AI-based supply forecasting and route optimization. Real numbers. Real rollout plan. Real market need. For 3 minutes. People listened. Then my father laughed. Not loud. Just enough. Enough to redirect the room. And he said, "This is exactly the problem with people who live in spreadsheets. You think intelligence is the same thing as leadership?" Then he put a hand on Derek's shoulder and told the room the future of the company was staying where it belonged. I stood there holding the clicker while the blood rushed into my face, and everybody watched me pretend I still had dignity. That was the moment that ended one life and started another. I went back to Illinois, packed 2 suitcases, sold what I could, and bought a one-way ticket to Seattle with $4,000 and enough fury to power a city. My family called it a phase. They were wrong. Seattle didn't care about my last name. That saved me. I freelanced by day, built by night, and used the professional name Alex Rivera because I wanted every client, investor, and partner to respond to the quality of the work, not the story attached to me. Those first years were ugly, expensive, lonely, real, but they gave me something I had never had at home. Clarity. Avery's earlier public humiliation at the business retreat and her move to Seattle under the professional identity, Alex Rivera, are central to the backstory. What I saw from the inside of the logistics world was simple. Most smaller firms had the same disease. Fragmented systems, slow warehouse data, reactive dispatch decisions, legacy software pretending to be modern because nobody had the courage to say it was dying. So while I was freelancing to survive, I built a platform at night. The first version was ugly, held together by caffeine, code, and spite. But it worked. It could pull warehouse throughput, route data, order velocity, and labor inputs into one system, and flag disruptions before they became expensive chaos. That platform became something real. Then that became something bigger. By 28, I formed Avengers Holdings, a parent company built around logistics, intelligence, warehouse orchestration, and predictive operations. We stayed private. We stayed disciplined. We bought smaller tools that solved real problems. We became valuable not because we were loud, but because we were useful where inefficiency cost millions. And all that time, my family knew almost nothing. When my mother asked how work was, I said busy. When Haley asked if I was still doing some kind of computer thing, I let her think that. When Derek asked if I had finally joined a real company, I smiled and changed the subject. My father barely asked at all. That became my greatest advantage. Because while they were dismissing me as background noise, I was watching Thomson Logistics Systems from the outside with a level of honesty nobody inside that company was willing to apply. And what I saw was not strength. It was decay wearing a legacy suit. The file describes Avery building the platform in Seattle, forming Avengers Holdings, and quietly watching her family's company become increasingly vulnerable. 18 months before that Thanksgiving, I realized the window had opened. Thompson Logistics Systems could still be saved, but only if someone got there before it was stripped for parts. I gave my father one chance. Through intermediaries, Avengers sent a quiet strategic partnership proposal that would have modernized the company without humiliating him. He rejected it almost immediately. He thought he was dismissing some outsider who didn't understand his business. What he was actually doing was closing the last soft door I had left open for him. So I stopped trying to spare his pride. By Thanksgiving, the board had been softened. The valuation had been anchored. The lawyers were deep in documents, and my father still had no idea who was really behind the offer. That is the funny thing about arrogance. It can stand in front of the truth and still call it irrelevant. So when he announced the sale and tried to play king one last time, I let him finish. Then I told him the name on the other side of the deal was me. He called it ridiculous. I slid a card across the table. Alex Rivera, founder and CEO, Avengers Holdings. And I watched the change move across his face in stages. Confusion. Resistance. Then realization. The buyer he admired was the daughter he spent years dismissing. Derek started shouting first. Men like him always think exposure is unfair when they've spent their whole lives protected by assumption. He accused me of playing games. I told him the deal was signed. Legal. And final. Then he made the mistake that finished him. He kept talking. So I mentioned the vendor kickbacks, the padded invoices, the side deals he thought nobody had traced. And suddenly the room changed again. Because this was no longer just about a daughter they underestimated. Now it was about the son they overvalued. The Thanksgiving confrontation escalates when Avery reveals the buyer identity, then exposes Derek's vendor kickback scheme uncovered in diligence. My father looked older in about 10 seconds. Haley started crying. My mother looked like a woman who had spent decades preserving appearances and just watched truth kick the front door in. Then my father asked me what I wanted. That question always sounds bigger than it is. Because people assume the hurt person must be driven by revenge. I wasn't. I wanted what I had earned. I wanted the company modernized before it collapsed under leadership that confused inheritance with competence. I wanted the people doing the real work to have a future not tied to my father's ego. And I wanted him, just once, to understand that his greatest mistake had not been underestimating the market. It had been underestimating his own daughter. The next morning, he called me into his study. He had not slept. He asked if the sale could be stopped. No. He asked what would happen to the company name. I told him I wasn't erasing my grandfather's legacy. I was ending the illusion that legacy alone could run a modern business. He asked what would happen to him. I offered him exactly what he deserved. Public respect. Private irrelevance. A chairman emeritus title. A generous package. No power. That hurt him more than anger would have. Then I showed him enough evidence on Derek to destroy whatever fantasy he had left. Derek resigned within the week. The real punishment wasn't losing his title. It was that everyone finally saw him clearly. Not as an heir. Just as a mediocre man who had been carried too long. And for a man like that, Being seen accurately is catastrophic. In the aftermath, Avery's father learns the sale is irreversible. Derek is pushed out quietly, and the family hierarchy begins to collapse. Haley's unraveling looked different, but it was real. Enough of the drama leaked that Brands backed away. Her engagement dropped. At first she blamed me. Then, to my surprise, she changed. She stopped performing perfection and started speaking honestly about dependence and embarrassment. My mother took longer. Months later, she came to Seattle and admitted what she should have said years earlier. She had always known I was the strongest mind in the room. Every time she stayed silent, she told herself she was keeping the family together. Now she understood silence doesn't protect families. It protects the people already winning. That was the closest thing to an apology she had ever given me. And because it was honest, I took it. My father never became warm, but he became quieter. And that mattered more than he would ever admit. 6 months later, Thompson Logistics Systems looked different. Leaner. Smarter. Less theatrical. We cleaned out bad contracts. Upgraded failing systems. Kept the people worth keeping. And rebuilt client confidence with results instead of speeches. I split my time between Seattle and Chicago. And when I walk through those offices now, nobody looked through me. Nobody asked whether I understood the real world. I had not just bought the company. I had broken the pattern that poisoned it. That is the real ending. Not humiliation. Correction. Not, look what I did to you. But, look what I built without your permission. That's the version of revenge I believe in now. The quiet one. The useful one. The one that leaves the room better than it found it. The closing arc in your source is about Avery modernizing the company, receiving partial honesty from her mother, and finally taking her rightful place without asking permission. So here's the truth. Family loyalty means nothing when it's built on favoritism, silence, and entitlement. A legacy is not preserved by handing power to the loudest son in the room. It is preserved by giving responsibility to the person willing to earn it. And never assume the quiet one at the table is powerless. Sometimes, she is just waiting until the paperwork clears.